It is so many weeks this week. It's Tasmanian Whiskey Week, so we've just been speaking to a distiller. It's Homelessness Week. So we're now going to speak to a man who has been there and done that. And winter's the perfect time to put a spotlight on that. It was cold in Hobart this morning, freezing winds rushing down the mountain, so he kind of froze as the sun rose. And imagine facing that in a tent or in the backseat of a car. We're about to meet Darran Petty. He's a speaker, a podcaster, a social media professional, a bodybuilder, a jiu-jitsu instructor. But once upon a time, he was facing that freezing wind down the mountain with no protection. What does it take to go from living on the streets to turning yourself around to have a self-propelled life? Darran, hello. How are you doing today?
I'm well, Joel. How are you?
Look, very well, thank you. How did you end up homeless?
Look, I won't say that I succumbed to primary homelessness. I was more couch surfing as a young person, as a teenager.
Yep.
And I want to just differentiate that, because I know that there are people out there that do live and suffer within that realm and bound of primary homelessness, which is living on the streets. And we do feel for them.
Yep.
For whatever their circumstance is, as to however they arrive there, we certainly feel for them.
So you weren't sleeping rough, but you didn't have a place to call your own?
No, that's right. I was out of home at 14 years old through my own circumstance of domestic violence, alcoholism within the family, etc. Just a breakdown of the family living situation. So there I was, living from friend to friend to friend to friend, climbing in and out of windows and avoiding parents, and being that friend that, was just hopping around and just trying to survive, And at the time it seemed sort of normal, but now looking back, I really am, I'm proud and surprised that I survived that time in my life.
How did it go schooling through that?
It's a really good question, and I really take this answer to heart, and I want this to, if anything permeates this should, and hopefully it will, to anyone listening. School kept me going. School had me somewhere to arrive. School had me protected. Where some children want to get away from the schooling system because of whatever reason, they're not assimilating to it, I found it a place to be looked after, to be cared for, to have friendships, to keep regiment. And, certainly teachers and friends looked after me because they were aware of my situation. I went to Trojan High School and I didn't have to wear uniform. They let me have that allowance that I could come in my normal everyday clothes.
Because you had what you had, yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult for me to do the washing of my clothing and all that sort of thing. No parents to help me there. So that was a huge thing for me, to keep my schooling going, and then therefore I think that's a key to the big part of my survival at that time in my life, to be honest with you.
What was your money situation then? Did you have access to social security of some sort?
So living away from home allowance, they allocated that to me. My social worker at the time sorted all of that out. Helped me do that. I went into Centrelink and had all that sorted. But, 14 years old, 15 years old, 16 years old, I was blowing a lot of that money, if not all of it, on alcohol. We started to, move marijuana around, selling it, smoking it, selling it, smoking it. That becomes a bit of a cycle.
Yep.
Selling it to pay for it. We're not trying to be, at that age, we weren't trying to be big-time drug dealers, but we were just trying to
have free pot
with each other. I was kind of that friend that could get away with most things and hide things and get away with all the stuff while everyone else went home to their family, and I was there sort of left reeling at times,
When did that settle for you? When did you actually get to the point where you had a home?
Oh, gosh. 38 years old, I would say. I entered this I was bankrupt at 21 years old.
Bankrupt?
So I was bankrupt. I was declared bankruptcy when I was 21 years old. And I just went from, and I'm not saying that I've been homeless this whole time. What I'm actually saying is that I've never really had a settled home to live in. I've always had that mindset coming from being that way when I was young to now. I kind of lift my roots a lot. And I kind of go from place to place to place. And it's part of my psyche. And I suppose that some people out there, I would actually be surprised if anyone can't. There'd be people out there that think the same way I do. And just now, I've just found myself kind of calm and having a living situation that's stable. But what I've actually lived through in most of my life is been driven towards and for my goals. And that came before everything. That came before having a stable home. It came before having a rental or owning a home. I've always been just like driven towards my goals, and
So
wherever I lived at the time was wherever I lived.
now, what are those goals that you've been chasing in that meantime?
So many. I've got a long list. I've got some paper here, but it's not on there. Look, so many goals. My first goal was getting myself away from alcoholism, from drug addiction. And that was in the form of pursuing weights and fitness in the gym. And that led me to becoming the Mr. Tasmania, Mr. Australia, going to Germany and competing at the Mr. Universe tournament 2007. And that saved me from and brought me out of that alcoholism part of my life in my teen years, where I was just a teenager drinking so much alcohol. It was disgusting. And smoking and drinking and taking illicit drugs. And bodybuilding got me out of that. So I pursued that and I conquered that goal, got to the top of where I could possibly get to, and became the best version of the bodybuilder that I could be. And then I went from that to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in 2008, pursued that all the way through to where I am currently, where I own Trojan Academy. And I've competed, all over the country against the best of the best, yada, yada. And now I help kids, teens and adults pursue their dreams and goals of becoming Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu athletes, but also self-defense and fitness.
It's funny. I was just watching Arnold Schwarzenegger documentary the other day, and he lived in his bodybuilding days a pretty similar life of not having stability, of crashing on people's places and going from country to state to city, just flipping around when he'd get a new opportunity and moving on to follow the dream. It was never about where he lived. It was all about what he was aiming to do with his life.
It really is a trait of sometimes of go-getters, that we don't anchor ourselves to certain situations. We are free to be able to do whatever's required to achieve that goal. And if that means uprooting and going to here or there to get that done, then that's exactly what he's done. And that's certainly what Arnold Schwarzenegger did in moving away from his home country over to America. And I mean, that story has written itself, hasn't it?
Yeah.
That's an amazing story.
Chasing the American dream in America.
And the American dream, or the Tasmanian dream, or the Victorian dream, or the Kingston dream. I think people need to have dreams.
You are listening to Afternoons on ABC Radio Hobart and ABC Northern Tasmania with Joel Reinberger. Darran Petty is with us. He's a bodybuilder. He's a life coach. He's a podcaster. He's all sorts of entrepreneurial things now, but did come from a background of homelessness. How important has that discipline of the body been to you, that you've maintained it for all these years?
Wow, I think that's a compliment. Maintained it in look, I used to be an absolute machine in the gym, and now I consider myself an average guy. However, I do understand that I've
Dear listener, he's not an average guy. I'm just here to tell you he's not.
Look, it's ingrained. It really is ingrained. And now I enjoy my life. I have normal food and I, drink. I'm able to eat this or that. But because of my intense training throughout my 20s, and I do recommend that for any man or woman or person out there that is in their 20s to pursue some sort of physical activity during their 20s, because it stays with you. Rather than try at your 40s to pick it up and run with it, it's very difficult. Not impossible, but it is more difficult. In your 20s, get in there and do some physical fitness. And that's what I did. And now I am what I am because I was what I was. And I think that's important for people to know.
What do you find that your jiu-jitsu offers, particularly to young people? I notice that you've got lots of kids who come to your training classes at Trojan. What does it give to them?
Self-defense. That's number one. But number two, and probably more important, is self-confidence. Some of the kids come in, they don't speak much, they don't interact much with other children, and especially with adults, intimidated, etc. And it doesn't take them long, and we assimilate them to becoming more confident within themselves. And you can imagine the way I look, and I'm a tall, somewhat foreboding figure. Tattoos, muscles. I look quite serious at times, and the children sometimes they come in and they won't even enter the mat. They'll just sit back and watch. But what I actually do, one specific tool that I do with the children is when we all sit down at the start, I chit-chat with them. And we just chit-chat. And I say to the children out loud, hey guys, we've got some new people here and I just want them to hear my voice. I want them to do two things. I want them to get to know that I'm not a scary person, but also that I'm the boss. And we get through all that and we talk about their injuries, and some of the kids put their hands up and say, oh, hurt my little finger, and we talk about the little finger, or I hurt my toe, or hurt my ankle, and we go through all that. But the reason why I chit-chat with the kids a lot is so that they can hear my voice, I can hear their voice, they can get used to talking to an adult. And some of the kids don't talk to me at all. Some of the kids talk and overshare. But I think that interacting with the children at Trojan Academy is one of my tools to get to know the kids and for them to get to know me. And I think that's important for any teacher of any discipline, schooling or not, to interact with the children one-on-one, face-to-face, and get into their lives and allow the boisterous ones to speak and allow the more quiet ones, to have that space to sit and listen, but also be accepted for that, if you know.
Now, you do ask the children to tell jokes on your videos that you do. What have been some of your favourite kids' jokes that have come through your system there?
Gosh, are we live?
We are live. We are on the radio as we speak. No rude ones, please.
No rude ones. Oh, I'm stuck. I'm absolutely stuck. There was one last night. I forget which one it was. Look, the one I've got one in my mind, but it's I have to. What kind of bees make milk?
I don't know. What kind of bees make milk?
Boobies. Maybe we can bring that. Maybe we can save that for National Breast Cancer Awareness Week. I mean, that's just what comes to mind. That's the most famous joke. It's got millions and millions and millions of impressions on my social media. It's upwards of 50 million impressions for this one particular joke. And when young Alexandra said it to me, I didn't know what to say. Just like you were now, right? I didn't know what to say. She's 6 to 7 years old, and the innocence that she's saying it from is just what brings that all together. In that, and I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to react. But these are the type of jokes that kids are telling, right? And it all comes from innocence. And I don't think that the way that the world is, and I won't go into any of that, but some of the bad things that happen in this world don't need to be put onto these kids. They can be themselves and they can feel free to have their own humour, because this is what the type of humour kids have. And I think they should feel free, regardless of what's happening in the world and people are up to that is untowards and horrible.
Darran Petty has been our guest. And whereabouts is your dojo, very quickly?
Trojan Academy is in Unit 2, 37 Ascot Drive, Hunningfield. But I would be remiss, Joel, if I didn't just say that I've got an upcoming event coming up. It's called Upgrade Life. And it's with Robin Moore, the voice of Blinky Bill.
I know Robin Moore. She's a champion.
She just said to say hello, by the way, on the way here. And Nick County. It's on the set. Starts at 10 a.m. It's at the RACV building in Hobart, and we're going to put everyone in the same room together and help people upgrade their life.
Cheers, Darran. Thank you.
Thank you, mate.
Your timing is perfect.